In progress.
Okay, we're going to record. So I think the result of the election is going to bolster our e-commerce industry. It's going to reduce regulations. I definitely think you're going to see more brands starting to pop up over the next couple of years, and they're going to be big. It's going to be a great run.
I do think you're going to start. I'm in agreement there. I think we're going to start seeing an easing in the economy. We're going to go back to spending. I think the deregulation that they're promising to do is going to be a significant boon to everything. And I think we'll start seeing it, before January 20th. I think we're going to start seeing it now in anticipation of what's to come. You also, I think, with interest rates starting to come down, there's usually like a 3-month lag from when they lower or raise interest rates till we start seeing some of those changes. But I'm hopeful that with what happened, we're going to start seeing that even sooner.
Well, I saw it immediately, and I'll give you a specific example. We have an invoice for a technology group that's building some really cool stuff for us within Checkout Champ. Our invoice to them monthly, just a short-term invoice, was 90,000 euros. Typically, when we do that conversion, it's about $127,000 US to convert. Yesterday, when Katie did it, it was 103,000.
Oh, wow, that's 25%.
So the dollar is already strengthening internationally. So, and I agree with Jay. Time to make some good money. And Trey said the people have spoken and spoken loudly. That's good. All right, so we're at 12:04. We have a good group of attendees here. I see a lot of people I know and admire. And shout out to CJ. Congratulations on the recent nuptials. Now you have to start making some money so you can start popping out some babies and living like an adult. All right, so let me make a quick introduction. Everyone knows me. I'm Matt Martorano. I'm the owner of Checkout Champ and Connective CRM, and I've been doing this for a very long time. And I think many of you will recognize that we have, over the last, I would say, several webinars that we've been doing, the series has been about protecting your business so that you can prepare for growth. Like last week, we talked about some of the FTC rules, and we're going to talk about that a little bit today. Prior to that, we talked about PayPal and how to implement that so you can achieve higher approval rates on e-commerce transactions. And it's been so long ago, I forgot what the previous one was, but we're going to do these as we find relevant topics. We're going to continue to do webinars with people who know what the fuck they're talking about. And that is why I have Yitz and Sruli from PAAY. So we've been partners for several years now. They brought to us a product called 3D Secure. And 3D Secure has historically secured the initial transaction with the card issuing bank. So basically what it does is it transfers the liability from the merchant to the card issuing bank. And surely tell me if I'm wrong. And what that does, if the bank says, yes, this is a legitimate transaction, it pivots the chargeback liability away from you, the merchant.
You got that right. It shifts the liability back to the issuing bank for any chargebacks with a fraudulent reason code.
Yeah. It doesn't happen 100% of the time, but in Europe, it's a requirement, and it's the adoption rate in the US is getting stronger and stronger. And I am proud to announce that we are the first company that I know of to implement and integrate 3RI. And 3RI now, for those of you who run subscriptions, will actually tokenize and shift the liability on recurring subscription transactions.
That's correct.
So you'd say hello.
Yeah, I feel like you don't even need us. You got it all. Yeah, so I'm Yitz. I'm the founder of PAAY. Matt and I go back quite a while, pretty much since I got into this space. I got into it looking to solve a friction at checkout problem, and very quickly learned how, for most merchants, their biggest pain points in the e-commerce world especially is fraud, and how that impacted them mostly on the liability side, but also very much on the approval side. So 3DS is something we got into by accident around 10 or so years ago. The networks finally realized that they've never invested in building out an infrastructure to power e-commerce. So the payment rails that we use currently are the same payment rails that power brick and mortar card present transactions. And the invention or creation of 3DS 2.0 was created then. We've had a front row seat to that. You know, been actively involved in helping figure out what that should look like, and we've been doing it ever since. And you know, we very much love it.
Shirley, you want to give a little bit of your background before I jump into some of the subscription topics?
Sure. I'm Sterling Gelderworth. I'm the head of strategy here at PAAY. I've been here for about 7 years now. Prior to this, I was just in other technology startups, but fell in love with payments from the day I started. So 7 years going strong, and been a partner with Connective and Matt most of that time.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about some subscription models that we see that work very well. And so I went to my team, my account managers who deal with clients on a day-to-day basis. And I said, guys, give me what you think are some of the best subscription models. I think many of us are familiar with the trial model where you get a trial period, you know, for $1 or some small nominal amount, and then it converts into a monthly payment. And who's the biggest trial advertiser right now? I would say Netflix. But I've also seen on Prime where if you want to add Max or Paramount Plus or any of these things, they'll do 7 or 14-day trials, and then it'll kick into, you know, whatever the monthly fee is. So these digital providers have been, you know, they figured it out, and they're doing obviously a great job. You've got companies that are valued at billions and billions of dollars. So we know about the trial model. There was a disruption back in 2018 when MasterCard decided to slam their evil fist on the table and say, enough is enough, you guys. We have to reel this back in a little bit. So the subscription piece of it for the old Nutra type products, I don't know if there's a place for it anymore. We certainly don't have an appetite for it any longer. You know, we want companies that are running legitimate businesses, legitimate traffic, and are trying to build brands. But there are other models that do really well. If you don't have a product that is specifically deliverable on a monthly basis, we've seen people implement subscribe and save models. Let me see a show of hands in the attendees. Who's running subscribe and saves right now? And what that means is if you don't have a product that you could deliver every single month, what you're saying is, I'm going to allow you to subscribe to the platform, and every time you come back, including this current purchase, I'm going to give you a deep discount because you're a member. Okay, so subscribe and saves are great. Patrick says yes, he's running subscribe and saves. Chris raised his hand. Subscribe and saves are great, fantastic. Robert raised his hand. The whole point of subscription billing models is to create MRR, monthly recurring revenue. Companies that have monthly recurring revenue achieve much higher valuations than companies that have what we call single purchases or one-time purchases, and you're just trying to drive traffic back every month to get another sale. A lot of companies have been implementing the subscribe and save model, like Bass Pro Shops and some of these larger stores where, you know, they don't mind giving you a discount because they know you're only going to come back like 4.3 times throughout the year. They've collected 12 months of $9.95 in your subscription, right? So it offsets that subscription, but you know, it's there. Membership clubs, access to exclusive items and discounts. It could be tiered based memberships, right? So this is specifically for, I would think, and if I'm wrong, more of a digital subscription. And one of our clients is one of the biggest golf subscription companies that I know of right now. And they have 3 levels or 4 levels, and it's kind of based off of what the airlines do. Like, you know, like a silver tiered level will give you access to this, but a gold will give you greater access to more videos and content, and a platinum will open up the gates and give you even more. And then, you know, whatever the highest level would be, gives you access to everything and direct conversations with golf pros or whatever that might be. And I've seen other companies, not just golf, do that successfully. Anyone running digital memberships right now that have any questions or want to jump in with and talk about processing or the subscriptions in general, or are we good? All right, I'm not seeing anything in the Q&A. All right, so the membership club is an interesting one. Now, going back to the conversation from last week with the new click to cancel, all subscription payments have to have the ability for a customer to cancel as easily as they were able to sign up, right? So we know that. We're going to talk about that at the end again. We have clients that run incredible item of the month clubs. It doesn't have to be the same product every single month. Like t-shirts, like these fuck Joe Biden t-shirts and all that stuff that came out. I've seen guys make hundreds of thousands of dollars a month selling t-shirts and decals and meal plans, all types of stuff, where every single month you're getting something different. Right. And if anyone watches Dan Bongino here, I watch him. It seems like every time he's on, he's wearing some new clever t-shirt that says, give our country back. I'm friends with the guy who runs all of his marketing. I'm like, turn that into a t-shirt of the month club. People will buy that shit. And he did, and they're doing very, very well because people want to wear what the folks they admire are wearing. So that's another way to do it. Anyone doing items of the month like t-shirts, decals, stickers, things like that? I'm seeing a bunch of hands popping up here. Meals, right? The meal plans. People, and I'll give you a great example. There are companies that are doing their prep. They're preppers. They're designed for preppers, and they're sending out these freeze-dried foods that you can store in your shelves for 30 years. And I think these companies are freaking out because conservatives are the ones that usually buy this. I think all they have to do is tweak their marketing a little bit, and then they'll be able to approach the other 50% of the country who did not vote for Joe Biden in 2020. And be able to sell subscriptions to them. But those meal plans every single month are fantastic. Everyone's seen like Jenny Craig, where every single month you're getting a different, actually, I think it's weekly. They send out 6 or 7 meals that are prepackaged and you just stick them in. What was the other one? Tyler, what was the other one that you guys use? Like HelloFresh is another one that's done meal plans quite successfully. We have a friend of ours and also a client that is doing seeds. Think about seeds, people that are into gardening. So every single season, there's a different type of crop that grows, right? So he's doing different type of seed bundles, and based on your geographic region, he's already figured this out, which seeds grow best in the various regions. And you just go in, select your region and say, I want to be able to plant every 3 months, and boom, boom, boom. I'm going to select these vegetables that I love. And they just package it up and send it out. So there's a lot of ways to create that. Bundle subscriptions. I think bundling is something that a lot of other platforms haven't quite figured out. It's a little tricky in that your bundle may change on every single billing cycle. So if you're on 30-day cycles, 60-day cycles, 90-day cycles, the customer can pick a different type of bundle every single period. A great way to describe this would be subscription boxes. Mystery box. Yeah, Lane said mystery box. So mystery box is one where you don't know what the fuck's coming, right? It's just, you're getting what they send you because that's the hot item of the month. But subscription boxes, if you go to any major retailer, Nordstrom's, whatever it might be, you can join a subscription box and you give them your sizes, you give them your styles and other types of variants. And every single month you get the product of the month of styles that they think would be most appropriate for you. And those have done very well. Some other types of subscription boxes that we've seen just absolutely smash it. Wine of the month clubs. If people like drinking wine and they want different types of wines from around the US or from around the world, wine of the month is fantastic. Cigar of the month clubs. Think about how easy it is to do cigars. You get a good distributor. You're sending out someone a box of, the best, that cigar of the month, right? And let them taste it. They come back and they put in their feedback into the platform, and then, they're selling more subscriptions. Anyone doing subscription boxes right now? No? I'm sure there are some of you that are, and you don't want to speak up, but subscription boxes are big. Wine of the month, cigar of the month clubs, clothing, all different types of subscription boxes. It could be, if you're running nutritional supplement companies, it could be different meal replacement shakes, different pre-workout, different post-workout, different flavors, different variants. So there's several ways to set that up. And let's talk about the billing periods, right? Years ago, and not too long ago, it was a trial with 14 days. That really doesn't give people much time to test their products. We've always found that being able to give someone, especially given the lag time of USPS and UPS and some of these other, extending that trial period for 30 days is usually the best. I know you want to expedite your revenue that's coming in, but if you're going to do something in a legitimate manner with a trial, give them 30 days to test it. But after that period of time, how often do you bill? Some would say monthly. But what if the customer calls you back and says, oh my gosh, this is way too much product, I want to cancel? Well, how often would you like that product? Right? Are you using it in 45 days, in 60 days? How often would you like it? Have the ability to adjust the frequency in which you can send those products to potentially retain some of those customers that might otherwise cancel. And give them that option. If they're coming in and they're logging into your platform, into the back end, right, the membership area, let them go in and be able to manipulate, change their credit card. Let them change the frequency. Let them change the date. Maybe they don't want it on the 1st of the month. Maybe they want it on the 15th. Let them change the date and make it seem like it's customized to their personal experience. And I think you're going to see retention rates increase. Is anyone doing subscriptions other than monthly? Can I see some hands? Anyone doing 60, 90 annual subscriptions? Yeah, Robert raised his hand. So being able to change the frequency in which the customer is being billed and product is being delivered could very well affect your retention rate of your customers, right? Could reduce your churn and increase your overall revenue. How about yearly memberships? Those are becoming more frequent options where it's, $100, whatever it is, $10 a month, or $12 monthly or $100 annually. You're saving $20 by paying the annual subscription. And then every 12 months on their anniversary, that product is being billed. A lot of SaaS companies do this. They offer a discount if you're buying a full year in advance. We don't do it because people want the ability to cancel if their business goes under, and I don't have to do a bunch of refunds. I won't refund. If you go out of business, you pay me an annual subscription. I just want to go on record to say that. Is everyone cool with that? I don't see any thumbs down, so good. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding, everyone. But as you can see, there's a whole number of ways that you can run subscriptions. So when you're running a subscription, there's a couple of things that I think you need to do. I think, as we talked last week, for those of you that weren't there, make your billing terms evident, like obvious on your websites. What are people getting? Because what's the number one chargeback reason that you're going to see? Oh, I didn't know I was being pulled into a subscription. When you're running a subscription, that should be the number one thing. Oh, I didn't know this is going to bill me every single month. Make them obvious. It'll help you fight chargebacks and maybe not get your merchant account shut down. So that would be great. Also, communication. If someone signs up for a product, how often are you communicating with them that they are indeed going to be billed again for their subscription? Well, if you look at the Visa MasterCard rules, you're supposed to be notifying them 3 to 5 days prior to a billing event. Does that help? Do people read those emails? Does it end up in their spam? You just need to know that those messages are being sent to those customers. And I don't care if you're doing it via email, via SMS, however you're doing, just make sure that you communicate with your customers that a billing event is going to happen. The click to cancel rules are real. It's scary when you read it. The overreach of the FTC could, in fact, fuck your business up. All right, so do things the right way, position your company to be successful, and follow the guidelines. For years, we've been unchecked, unregulated, on this, on that, and it's time to straighten up. And if you do it the right way, you can still make a lot of money and probably beat out your competition, because they're the ones that are going to get in trouble for not following the guidelines. You saw it could be, as Patrick said, as much as $50,000 a day per incident. Per incident is for every customer. So protect yourselves. What's another way you can protect yourself? Well, those of you that are with Stripe or with some other processing platforms, you know, you're going to get chargebacks, and chargebacks are going to just put you out of business if you don't manage them the right way. Through chargebacks management companies that are out there, chargeback mitigation companies like Chargeback Wizard, you know, great companies that do Ethica and Chris, what's the other one? RDR, and then, you know, fighting the chargeback directly that aren't deflected by those platforms. But then there's an awesome little product called 3D Secure. And 3D Secure, as we talked about earlier, puts the liability from the merchant onto the card issuing bank. And at this moment, I'm going to turn it over to Yitzhak Sruli, and I'm going to shut the hell up for probably a half hour unless there are questions that come up. Let me turn it over to you. Tell us a little bit about 3D Secure and how the new 3RI platform works.
All right.
Tell us a little bit about PAAY. I know you started going to.
I'll give you a very quick, you know, PAAY is, we focus on enabling secure, fast, and customer-friendly online payment authentication. Main goal there is to help businesses prevent fraud and comply with regulations while actually improving the payment experience for customers. We got into this, for the most part, we're focusing on 3DS. That is a protocol that we sell. 3DS was created originally, I think it was in 1999. It was created because the concept of a card, you know, card not present transaction, the rules around card present, card not present were created 50, 60 years ago, when if I was a merchant, there was really, I was either taking a payment over the phone or the cardholder didn't have their card with them, and, you know, they were telling it over to me from memory. And the networks really didn't want merchants to take those type of transactions. So they created this rule that card present, lowest risk. It's the banks that are liable for it if it ends up being a fraudulent transaction. Card not present, inherently riskier. So if it ends up being fraudulent, it's the merchants that are liable for it. You know, fast forward to the 90s, and suddenly e-commerce starts to take off, and merchants are like, we can't do a card present in this environment, even if we wanted to. So they created this initial iteration of 3DS. The benefit to using 3DS was really just one main one, which was that it shifted the liability off the merchant onto the issuing bank. But the experience was like brutal. It would be a pop-up where consumers would be asked some knowledge-based questions, or create a username or a password every single time that they would check out. And again, the benefits were the liability shift. The problem was that merchants were losing more to conversion issues and shopper cart abandonment than they were saving. So it never really took off. Around 10 or so years ago, the network started to realize, hey, the card not present environment's growing. You know, it's single digits, but at some point over the next 10 or so years, we're going to be doing more card not present than card present. And that's evolving also from not just desktop, but mobile, voice activated transactions, Internet of Things, gaming consoles, metaverse. Like, we have no idea, you know, where it's going to continue to evolve to. And it's time for them, you know, they realize that they have to build out an infrastructure. So they created, you know, 3DS 2.0. It's really completely built from the ground up. What it does simply is it allows banks to determine in real time, prior to authorization, if it's the cardholder making that transaction. And the two big benefits that it does is it shifts the liability off merchants onto the issuers, which, especially if you're in the subscription based businesses, you see a lot of first party or friendly fraud. So even the most sophisticated fraud prevention tools won't stop a transaction from happening there. But what 3DS does is they're basically saying now it's an issuer problem. It's no longer a merchant problem. And the issuer at that point could then push back on the cardholder if they don't want to pay for it and say, hey, what do you mean this wasn't you that made the purchase? We did an authentication. We confirmed it was you beforehand. We have a digital fingerprint of you doing this transaction. and then then it becomes a different it becomes a merchant's the issuer's or cardholder's problem for it. The other way, which is also very important, is on the approval side. As you know, from a subscription-based business, every time you try a new recurring transactions, the approval rates tend to degrade. And what 3RI is, and I'll let Shirley talk a little bit about that. What that does is it allows on the approval side, but even on the regular side, on a regular straight sale transaction, merchants are seeing lower approval rates than they would in a card present environment. And 3DS was created specifically to help on these two ways, because fraud, these are the two big ways that fraud impact merchants. Shirley, I'll let you talk a little bit about 3RI and add anything else that I forgot.
Shirley, before you go, I just want to mention that I pulled up some statistics from Statistia. By 2028, they're estimating that the e-commerce market is going to be over, in the US alone, is going to be over $1.5 trillion. Think about that. Think about that. That's a lot of chargebacks. No.
Yeah, it's massive.
Definitely is. But 3DS was created for those e-commerce transactions, and until now, it's only been able to do that first transaction and that first sale. But when we're talking about subscriptions and recurring transactions or other payment methods, you weren't able to protect those. So 3RI is a new part of the 3DS protocol, which allows us to protect recurring transactions, and it does this by utilizing the authentication data from the first transaction and allowing us to resubmit that to the bank to get a refreshed authentication and then protect the rest of the series of the transaction. Any questions about that, or how it works, what it can protect?
Yeah, I actually have a question. I always thought the 3DS didn't work for recurring transactions. Can you tell us a little bit if it works? How it's going to work for recurring transactions as they're occurring?
Yeah, so it never worked for recurring transactions because it was always an authentication of the cardholder at the time of the transaction. It was for customer initiated transactions in a card not present environment, right? So the customer had to be there. The authentication was taking place by sending transactional data to the issuing bank and allowing the bank to fingerprint the device. So there's a digital fingerprint that's being created and being compared to metadata that the issuing bank already has on that cardholder. That kind of framework doesn't work in a recurring transaction, because a recurring transaction is a merchant initiated transaction where the cardholder is not involved at all. What 3RI allows us to do is now correlate the data from the original initial authentication and bring it through that whole series of transactions, and allows the bank to determine, based on where this is coming from, what was already authenticated, where the transaction came from, and where it's going, that it's part of the same series of purchases, right? When you sign up for a recurring transaction for a subscription, you're adding, we're sending through the merchant information as well as the recurring time frame, how long they're expecting, and the bank has all this information to say, okay, we know it's the cardholder every time, and give you that shift in liability.
So that's it. So whenever I see acronyms CIT and MIT, that's customer initiated transaction and merchant initiated transaction. And for the merchant initiated transaction, what I'm hearing you saying is those are for the recurring payments, it would be the MIT, the merchant initiated. But what it's doing is it's identifying the initial transaction fingerprint and saying, yes, this is still the same purchase on the subscription.
Yeah, so part of the information that you're sending through on that 3RI request is first of all, the type of transaction that it is. So there are, and we'll talk about this, I guess, as we get going, but there are different types of 3RI requests. One of them being a recurring payment. So you're going to tell the bank that, hey, this is a recurring payment that we want to authenticate. You're going to tell it the frequency and when it expires. So knowing that a cardholder signed up for a monthly, quarterly, yearly subscription and how long they signed up for, that's information that gets sent through on the request, as well as the information from the prior authentication. So every time that you're asking for a new authentication and a new shift in liability, for that transaction, it's going to send the previous one so that they have all the data to compare it to and know that this is still part of that series. And that allows the bank to have more information, authenticate against it, and then even increase the approval because they have all that additional data to do it with.
Okay, and so everyone that's here, if you don't understand how the back end works on subscriptions, so the credit card is pushed through the first time. We get the response back from the gateway with a token, and that's the rebill token. So on every single rebill cycle, we're pushing the token through at 30-day increments, 60, 90, whatever that might be. And that's what's triggering the purchase. So it's really confirm you don't need the credit card holder to be present on the website on those. You just need that recurring token as we're pushing it through.
Correct. So on the subscription on the recurring payments, you only needed the cardholder to be present at that first initial transaction. After that, every time the merchant pushes through, we can still authenticate against it and protect the merchant.
All right, I got a great question here from Christian. If the initial transaction is 3DS protected, will the subsequent recurring transactions also be protected, or do they require re-authentication? If no re-authentication is needed, how many rebilling cycles are protected? Is there a maximum?
So that's a great question, but it's if the initial is 3DS protected, then you have the opportunity to protect all the subsequent transactions utilizing 3RI. So it's not that it automatically becomes protected by doing that 3DS authentication on the initial transaction, but now that you did the initial with 3DS, you can use that data and take advantage of 3RI to protect the rest of the payments in a series.
Excellent. So 3RI is totally a part of 3DS, or is it a totally separate protocol? Because right now everyone's on 3DS, or at least they should be 2.0 or greater.
So it's part of the greater 3DS 2.0 protocol.
Okay. What are some of the best practices for merchants when integrating 3RI with their 3DS solution?
I mean, one of the things I would definitely, and this is Yitz might or might not agree with me on this one, but one of the things that I would say is on that initial transaction, you may want to. Typically, we run 3DS completely frictionless. No change to the cardholder experience. Doesn't cause, the cardholder should come, put in the credit card information, everything's happening in the background, and you get protected for whatever percentage can be done in a frictionless manner, right? If let's call it about 80 to 85% of the time, the banks will have enough data, they won't have to challenge the cardholder in any way, which means that everything can be done in the background and you get that protection. For the rest of the time where the bank might not have enough information to determine whether or not they believe it's the cardholder, then the merchant can accept that liability on that transaction to still get the sale. Potentially, when you're doing a subscription, you might want to allow for the bank to challenge the cardholder in the 15% of the time where they don't have enough information by sending a one-time text message and saying, please enter the code or whatever it might be, so that the cardholder can identify themselves, basically. And the bank can be confident that the cardholder is the one making the purchase, because that will allow you now to protect not only that first sale, but then the recurring as well. So in a situation when you're in a subscription model, you might want to add the additional protection in the beginning so that you can get more of the sales at the end.
Yeah, I have a difference of opinion on that, simply because in the 15%, you're usually going to get a lot of false positives. So 3DS, over time is going to get smarter as more people start using it and the issuers start getting more data around that. But true fraud makes up about 0.25% of all transactions, and ultimately there's a fine line between how much you want to manage your chargebacks and also like how much you want to kill your conversion. So 3DS tends to have a significant impact on your chargebacks. Like we had one guy who had like a 5% chargeback rate. Utilizing 3DS, his rate dropped to well under 1%. So you have to basically weigh the cost benefit there if it makes sense to do a prompt. But you can get significantly more coverage around it if you are doing the challenges in those additional 15%. And that, by the way, that frictionless rate will continue to grow. So eventually it's going to go to 80, 90,
Well,
95%.
the stated goal is to be above 95%.
Yeah. Another question that came in: what kind of token ID or transaction ID is used to refer to the previous transaction in a 3RI authentication? Would it be an ARN or something else?
It would actually be the prior DS transaction ID.
Okay.
So that means it's coming from the 3DS. There's a number of data points that we add to a transaction, and one of them is called the DS transaction ID, and that is what would be passed through.
And if you use Checkout Champ, you just literally just check a box and it does all that for you. You don't have to worry about anything.
If you use Checkout Champ, all this is taken care of for you.
Patrick, I'm going to hold off on your question to the end, but you guys keep throwing questions in there. I know this is an interesting product. It can really help your business, even if you're doing one-time transactions. But let's, we talked about best practices. 3RI, is it impacting the liability shift rules under 3D Secure?
So that's a very good question. The short answer is yes, it does, but it's limited right now to every single network except for Visa. Not because Visa doesn't want to do it, but because the recurring indicator, when you send through a transaction, they utilize one of the fields that 3DS utilizes. So because of that, they have technical limitations on being able to do it. So they are going to be making changes to their infrastructure there, and then eventually Visa will work as well. So right now you're limited to just MasterCard, American Express, and Discover, but I expect that I would say in the next 12 to 18 months that Visa will make that as well.
All right, so here's an interesting question. I know why Jack is asking this, and I know you know why Jack's asking this, but have you seen the issuers let up on issuer declines such as Pickup, SF, and Do Not Honor in the past couple of months? Obviously, shifting liability for a small amount of money on rebill transactions is advantageous, but the cost of higher approval rates. Have you seen a change in the way that issuers are looking up on the approvals?
Yeah, so I'll answer this. I'll break this down. I'll split the networks here. Visa and MasterCard are, both have different approaches to it. MasterCard has been significantly better just at pushing adoption around 3DS and creating rules that keep the issuers honest. They have something called data integrity, I think is the name of their rule. And that basically requires issuers to approve a minimum of 85%. I think it might be up to 90% of all transactions that have 3DS. But you cannot, meaning insufficient funds and those type of things don't count towards it, but you can't have blanket do not honors. So they make sure issuers are being compliant with this stuff. Generally on a MasterCard side, you'll see a jump of, according to MasterCard, it's like 12, 13% in auth rates. On the Visa side, it hasn't been as good. Visa doesn't work with 3RIs. So, I'm talking about just specifically in general around 3DS. Chase is considered notorious for not approving. So you are going to see a little bit of a degradation in your approvals with Chase. I think they're the only issuer that it is. We have an ability to bin mute though for Chase, but again, they are one of the largest issuers, so it's not like it's a small thing. At some point, they are going to make it. They're going to be forcing and creating similar rules that MasterCard has, but they don't have it right now. We've been hearing it for the last year. It's in the pipeline for them to do it. When it'll happen, who knows? Visa and Chase have they're the largest customer. So they try to tend to do whatever Chase says. They play nice with them. Also, a lot of the senior people there came from Chase. I think like the CEO is former Chase. So, on the Chase side, you are seeing a little bit of a lower approval rates.
Well, I think that fits into my next question, which is how do you think 3RI is going to fit into the broader picture with the card brands and the issuers?
So 3RI, a little bit of like, I guess, from a logical perspective, if you think about it, when you're authenticating a transaction on the initial with 3DS, right? And it's a subscription model. So let's say Netflix, uses 3DS, they authenticate the initial transaction. The second, third, fourth, and fifth should not be able to be charged back for fraud, which just logically makes no sense. If they authenticated as a cardholder on the first one, and it's a subscription, right? You want to say it's because I never signed up for a subscription. That's a different type of chargeback. But an actual fraud chargeback just logically didn't make sense. So the networks realized there were limitations to the way it was being utilized, and the way, just overall, the rules that they created were working against merchants. It's always been a system rigged against them, and once e-commerce took off, it's gotten significantly worse. And they've realized that they either have to create protocols and software that could work within their rules, or they're going to have to change the certain rules around it. And 3RI is their answer to saying, hey, listen, recurring transactions. If we're saying a card not present a merchant is going to be liable for fraudulent transaction, we have to give them the ability, even on a recurring transaction, to protect those. So they are going to push it. They are going to roll out different utilizations for it. So right now, if you want to see if a card is active, you'll do a $0 off. So 3RI is actually a way to do a non-payment authentication. So you're basically pinging the server to confirm that this card is still active.
Got it. All right. So 3DS, in your experience, have you seen it decrease conversion rates?
No, we have seen a decrease on approvals. Again, it's on the chase side. With bin muting, you generally don't see that. The 3DS should have zero impact on the actual conversion side of it, outside of that, the approval side. Again, if there is, it's usually something's broken along the way. I remember we had a case where this goes back with the tail end of 1.0, where every single transaction suddenly was the approval rate dropped significantly on 1.0. 1.0 should never have it didn't have any impact on authorizations at all, because they never connected authentication and authorization. And what we eventually found out, it was a thesis. Thesis had made some changes with 2.0 for integrations, and basically banks were hard coding in that it was basically a mall kiosk. So instead of looking at a traditional e-commerce, they had an unattended mall kiosk, which are probably the highest risk. So issuers were flagging these transactions and declining them at a much higher rate than they would of a regular e-commerce. But in general, 3DS should have no impact. It should improve authorizations, especially if you're bin muting, the bins that are seeing lower approvals.
So if 3RI, let's just walk through this. If an initial transaction for 3D Secure is approved and the client is utilizing 3RI, if that initial transaction is authenticated, we shouldn't see a decrease in rebill rates, should we?
No.
You should actually see an increase on the authorization and approval side. You should see an increase, especially since right now we're only really talking about MasterCard, Amex, and Discover, because like gets mentioned, Visa is not giving the liability shift on the recurring yet from a technical limitation on their side. And since MasterCard does have the rules in place to make sure that the approvals are not just being blanket declined, you should see an increase when it comes to 3RI.
Yeah, and
well, I think it's fascinating. I think it's fascinating that Visa's kind of waiting, considering that they were the ones who pushed for 3D Secure all over Europe as a mandatory thing. Baffling.
Yeah. So 3RI, it is baffling, but this is Visa. They've always been like that. A lot of their rules that they create were backwards. They created this rule, VAMP. I don't know if you remember, which was a big issue. It was really created to make sure merchants were utilizing 3DS in the proper way and not only sending through the high risk transactions which is what happened a lot by 1.0. And instead, most banks were like, listen, we have a small percentage doing 3DS. If we're going to be, if we have these VAMP requirements, we're just going to tell everyone to stop utilizing it. So they are a little bit backwards, and, unfortunately, but I think, slowly over time, we'll get them to change. But 3RI was created because besides the liability side, there's also the approval side. And on subscription, they see it a lot more than regular traditional straight sale merchants, where their approval rates are not nearly as high as they should be. And every single time you're doing a new recurring transaction, your approval rates are going to continuously drop. So 3RI was made specifically to see approval, to see an increase on authorizations.
Well, with that, are we going to see additional protocols for 3D Secure and 3RI?
I do think so. I think the networks are first now. I think we're in the infancy stages in building out the infrastructure that's going to power e-commerce. They realize that it's something that they neglected for the last 25 or 30 years already at this point, and it's time for them to build out an infrastructure. So you see things like what they call secure commerce or SRC. It's the click to pay. There's that. There's a fight over who's going to own tokenization. You have the network token. So there are a lot of different things that they're doing to create it. And as 3DS starts to, continue to take off, they will start building out other things around that.
What kind of data do you have around utilizing 3RI? What do you see the deflections being?
So right now, I would tell you right now, the issuers that, well, technically all issuers, it's mandatory for them to be set up on for 3RI, which is I think 2.2 on the issuer side. There's still lower adoption than there is for regular traditional 3DS. And that is, we're still seeing about a 55 to 60% success rate on that, but that'll continue to go up over time. MasterCard especially is pushing a lot of their issuers to get up to date to do that. So you'll start seeing it, and you will definitely see an increase on approvals. We have a few merchants using it right now. I could get some more data around that. We have one specific I've been using it for the last 3 months, so we have a good. We could probably get some case study there.
Great. The last question that came in is, okay, I'm sold. You have used Pay in the past. What is the pricing between 3DS and 3RI?
So I'm going to turn that over to Matt. You can get all your 3DS stuff through Connective. Checkout Champ and Checkout Champ. You have it there. It's all there, and you don't really have to do any sort of heavy lifting, especially on the 3RI side. If you're using them, if you're already set up in Checkout Champ, it's literally just checking a box within Checkout Champ, and it's going to happen automatically.
And the beautiful thing is, if you've already been using, oh, sorry, Matt.
No,
I was just going to say, if you've already been using and utilizing 3DS within Checkout Champ, you already have the authentication data from your initials. So you can go back a while now and start protecting any subscriptions you're already in the middle of.
Well, that's fascinating. That's a very good point.
And you can go back. You could go back a couple of years even.
Yeah.
Holy shit. Okay, so we're going to talk about that for a moment, but let me tell you why it's saying that it's as easy as clicking a button. Historically, when clients were using our platforms and they're using the API, there used to be this JavaScript that had to be injected onto the page. And then it needed to be configured and need to be tested and all this stuff. We have it figured out within Checkout Champ where you quite literally click a button, it activates it, puts the JavaScript on the page where it needs to be, and it's like that, easy peasy. So now let's go back to what these gentlemen just said about going back into transactions. Obviously, you're not going to go back and transactions that have charged back and that's been settled. But if you have existing subscriptions and the initial transaction was on 3D Secure, are you telling this group of people that they can then activate 3RI and protect all of those subsequent transactions? Because remember, you go back 180 days in chargebacks.
Yeah, but by subsequent, you can only go going forward. You're not going to be able to go back. And once you've already charged those you won't be able to. But if you have a cardholder that's still transacting with you and they're still, subscribed to you, every single transaction going forward, even though if you didn't do, let's say you had someone who signed up 5 months ago, you didn't do the 5 month, the 4 months in between.
You did the initial, you didn't do the 4 months.
Right. You're able to protect everything going forward.
So you can retroactively protect the cycles that have already happened, but you can take that initial and start protecting the rest of them.
Fascinating. That is interesting. Okay, let me see a show of hands. Who wants to turn this on? Start running it. Christian, Patrick, obviously. 2, 3, 4. Okay, here we go. All right. Again, it's as easy as going into the platform, activating it, and it'll go right onto your pages. If you're leveraging the API, if you're going totally headless, contact your account manager. They'll work through it with you and get you set up. I think it's a great product. You know, it's very inexpensive in comparison to what it costs you for a chargeback. Even the hassle of, you know, refunds and all that stuff, I think it's worth at least investigating, testing it, and see how it works with your business flow. Any other questions while the QA is still open? Anything that you guys like? What questions didn't we ask that we should have? That's a good question, isn't it? What didn't we ask?
That's a good question.
Don, we covered it all?
I think so.
Damn, I'm good. Damn, I'm good. Fantastic. Well, without any additional questions coming in, I'd like to thank Yitz and Sruli for taking the time to talk to our clients and giving a little education, can you at least say how it's billed? Oh, can you at least say it's billed monthly, Patrick, right onto your bill? Jack has a question, but he's afraid to ask it. Oh, come on. Okay. All right. This has gone on far too long. This was fantastic, guys. I'd like to thank the folks at PAAY for putting this together with us. Thank you for, again, dropping all that
Thank
knowledge.
you, Matt. This was a lot
I'm
of fun.
sure more questions will come up and we'll just direct them straight to Sruli. We're not going to bother you with this. It's all right. Everyone have a great day. Thanks for showing up to this. If you guys have any suggestions, comments, things that you want to learn about that maybe we haven't spoken about yet, we can start doing research, pulling together for additional webinars. This is going to be recorded. It'll be available for replay at youtube.com/@checkout-champ. You'll be able to see this whenever you want. So thanks, guys.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks,
Great
Matt.
to see you.
All right. Have a great day. Bye.